While much of history remembers animation's early years for its whimsical nature and the inception of some of pop culture's most iconic characters, there has been controversy and censorship in animation from the very beginning.
Want to join my campaign to fight the census repression in our library?
Get lost!
I baked brownies.
Awesome!
Interestingly, in modern examples, much of this is self-imposed. Disney and Warner Brothers alike have exiled some of their content to a figurative vault. Some examples involve what could just be categorized as outdated, while others contain overt racism and scenes of unwanted romantic or sexual advances. Looney Tunes has a series of problematic and banned episodes known as the Censored 11, which feature racist episodes with titles such as Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves and Tokyo Jokyo. The controversy of such examples is self-explanatory. However, as animation and cinema matured, the media found its way into the world of experimental and exploitation film. It was here that some of the examples of censorship became more nuanced and directly connected to the current standards seen on Cartoon Network.
Gee, what a mob in the park today.
During the 1970s, Fritz the Cat by Ralph Bakshi was released. It became the first animated film to ever receive the X rating by the MPAA. Fritz featured sharp social commentary and showed its characters engaging in sex, violence, and drugs. And while its rating and content are noteworthy, its significance in dismantling the norms of Western animation is what really makes it iconic. Fritz the Cat was a huge success and allowed Ralph Bakshi a level of creative freedom nearly unheard of at the time. From 1972 to 1983, Bakshi created 8 films which helped pave the way in redefining the rules of animation, both in the ways it was produced and the audience it was intended for. Walt Disney may have set the gold standard for what animation can and should look like, but Bakshi established that you could completely break that standard and still find great success. It was Bakshi's success and the message that he sent to other creatives in the industry that encouraged the avant-garde nature of some of Cartoon Network's original programming. However, before these new creators could begin to spread their wings, they needed to find a home and platform to work with. It is here that Cartoon Network comes into play, the history of which begins with media mogul Ted Turner. Ted Turner was established, owning outlets such as TNT, TBS, and CNN. Over the years, he acquired the rights to a slew of animation, including even the archives of MGM. Thus, Cartoon Network was created as a for-profit outlet to diversify and maximize the earnings of such content. While all initial content from Cartoon Network were old shows that Turner owned, the channel quickly began producing original content. 1993's The Moxie Show was the first original series, followed by Space Ghost Coast to Coast and What a Cartoon. As CN started to identify itself by its original content, it began to develop a unique brand identity. The Powerpuff Girls became a milestone for the network and led to a cavalcade of success in merchandising and fandoms. Interestingly, instead of choosing what would have been easy male leads, the show subverted expectations and featured 3 young, girly female heroes who immediately became iconic, making them an early example of diversity and inclusion on the channel. However, with a wider audience came pushback for the cartoon's violence and closer scrutiny for all of CN's original programming. Cartoon Network as a corporation dealt with this same type of pendulum that we have seen in all film censorship. As one line in the sand is drawn, creatives find ways to push boundaries and manipulate content. Especially in the world of animation, which depends on churning out episodes while a property is popular, the game of how far can we go is unending. The early era of original programming featured themes of political commentary, societal satire, and nihilistic behavior veiled behind easily digestible characters and comedic visuals. For instance, Courage the Cowardly Dog was marketed as a comedy, yet it featured a grotesque, perpetually abused dog battling dystopia just in an attempt to receive its owner's love. Cartoon Network's early programming sought to utilize the medium to create a unique identity outside of the older content the network had originally been known for. However, it still fell into some of the same tropes and problematic nature that older animation had faced. Take Johnny Bravo. While disguised as satire, this show featured a stereotypical alpha male who displayed all the behaviors we now associate with toxic masculinity. As new shows came and went, the network became savvy as to what it could and could not get away with. Occasionally, episodes or thematic elements of shows would make it past censors initially, only to be pulled from further airings, creating banned episodes. However, censorship was often applied under the context of being marketed for children, so instead of shying away from its more edgy content, they simply decided to break its programming into two brands.
Don't you understand that children must be challenged so that they don't grow up to be cartoon-like cookie-cutter stereotypes?
Yeah. Hey.
Exemplifying the nature of for-profit programming, CN made an entire extra network, Adult Swim, which existed on the same channel, but for after hours. Here, Cartoon Network placed all of its content that had otherwise been deemed risque by censors. One way to think of it is like using the bones for the broth. Another reference for the CN Adult Swim concept would be the rating system. Assuming the network received a G or PG rating for a show, they would then aim their merchandising and advertising strategy at the show being featured during the day as a CN original. Assuming the show received an R rating, instead of being abandoned, it would simply be marketed as an Adult Swim show. As Adult Swim gained popularity and the boundaries were pushed, shows that may have received an X or NC-17 rating were adopted and found a new home. This safe space didn't just give opportunities for new animated storytelling. It also allowed Western audiences to be exposed to international work in the medium. While CN had shown anime in the past on its Toonami block, oftentimes the only shows that were given a chance were recognized brands like Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon. With Adult Swim, more obscure anime and other international animation now had a platform. Similar to when the network was originally conceived, Adult Swim's early years were filled with a need for content, leaving them to throw things against the wall and see what stuck. In some ways, the advent of Adult Swim allowed animation to come full circle. There was a return to the world of experimental animation, and boundary pushing that only this specific medium could allow. While the core absurdist nature of Cartoon Network remained, the context it was presented in only grew. Ending after the late 2010s, the more recent block of original programming contained shows such as Adventure Time, Steven Universe, The Amazing World of Gumball, and Regular Show. These shows pushed boundaries on making social commentary while diversity, equity, and inclusion became part of the narrative. However, the overarching goal for profit leaves conflict between the creative teams and studio mandates. As of this video, Cartoon Network has entered a new and perhaps final iteration. In the world of cord cutting and the shift towards streaming services, the network has found a new home on the platform HBO Max. It exists as one of their hubs alongside its sister network Adult Swim, as well as DC Universe programming, the Turner Classic Movie Catalog, the films of Studio Ghibli, a selection of anime from Crunchyroll, and of course HBO itself. In some ways, CN has made a complete circle. It has gone from being a small piece of a larger puzzle created to simply showcase acquired properties, to a home for original programming, to an innovator in animation, and now back again to another small piece of a puzzle. Interestingly though, the nature of HBO Max allows the network to showcase its entire catalog and introduce a whole new audience to its nearly 30 years of programming. So we may just watch the cycle continue. Overall, the story of Cartoon Network is one that touches on many of the themes of cinema and censorship. It is an entity that is engaged in the push and pull nature of censorship and restriction since its inception. Every time it found success with something new, it faced the scrutiny of classification through the lens of whether or not it was appropriate for children. Finally, as its profits increased, so did its need to adapt and stay one step ahead of the constantly changing sensibilities and guidelines associated with its target demographic. Thank you, Dr. Pete, for the opportunity to research a topic we have such a personal connection to from an academic perspective. This was a wonderful class, and we appreciate you so much.